My son secretly quit medical school and used my money to party. Now he's asking me to support him again. I gave up everything to put my son Jason through medical school. I sold my rental property, withdrew my 401k early and paid the penalties, and worked double shifts as a nurse to earn extra money. I even moved into a one-bedroom apartment so he wouldn't have to worry about finances and could focus on studying. Every month, I sent him $5,000. Tuition, rent for his downtown apartment, food, books, everything was covered. He promised that when he became a doctor, he'd take care of me. He called me his hero, said he studied every night, sent photos of himself in scrubs, talked about rotations and professors. I was so proud. My son, the future doctor. 3 years went by, $180,000 in total. Then last month, I ran into his roommate's mother at the grocery store. She casually mentioned how nice it was that Jason and her son were building their entertainment company together. Entertainment company? Roommate? Jason lived alone so he could focus on school. She looked confused. Her son had been living with Jason for 3 years. They threw parties every weekend and ran a DJ business together. Jason hadn't been in medical school since his first semester. He dropped out after failing his first anatomy exam and never told me. For 3 years, he kept taking my money. He spent it on DJ equipment, parties, trips to Miami and Vegas, living his best life while I survived on rice and beans to pay his fake tuition. I called the medical school. They confirmed he withdrew in 2021. The registrar said they had sent multiple letters to his permanent address, my address. Jason had been intercepting my mail. That night, I drove to his apartment. His real apartment, not the studio I thought I was paying for. It was a luxury penthouse filled with music equipment, a professional DJ setup, a recording booth, and 3 roommates I'd never met. Jason had been intercepting my mail. That night, I drove to his apartment. His real apartment, not the studio I thought I was paying for. It was a luxury penthouse filled with music equipment, a professional DJ setup, a recording booth, and 3 roommates I'd never met. Jason was in the living room mixing tracks. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised, just irritated that I showed up without warning. I asked him about medical school. He shrugged, said it wasn't for him. Too much memorization, too many rules. He had found his real passion in music, built a following, made connections. He said he was an artist now. I asked about the $180,000. He called it an investment in his future. Said the money helped him network, build his brand, and buy equipment. According to him, it all worked out. His business was growing. He'd made $30,000 last year. Only $150,000 less than what I gave him. When I started crying, he told me to stop being manipulative. Said parents are supposed to support their kids' dreams. That I should be proud he found his calling. His roommates agreed. Said it was cool that I funded his journey, as if I knew what I was funding. I left without saying anything else. I needed time to process everything. The betrayal, the lies, the years I spent working double shifts, the retirement savings gone, the property I'd never get back. Jason didn't call, didn't apologize, not a single message for 2 weeks. Then yesterday he called, excited. He said he had a huge opportunity. A famous DJ wanted to collaborate. They could tour, open a studio, build something big. He just needed startup money. $50,000. He said since I'd already invested so much in his education, what was a little more for his real career? He promised he'd pay me back double when he made it. Just like he promised to become a doctor. I told him I'd think about it. He said there was no time, that the DJ was talking to other people. This was his shot. Our shot. He said we were a team. That I wasn't just his mother. I was his business partner. Without me, none of this would exist. Which was true. Without me, he would have had to get a job instead of pretending to study medicine. I asked him to meet me at my apartment to discuss it. He arrived in a Tesla, said it was leased for his image. Part of the business. He brought contracts. Had everything prepared. I'd be a silent partner, get 15% returns, and my name wouldn't appear anywhere to avoid tax complications. He told me to trust him. I let him finish his entire pitch. Watched him pull up spreadsheets, show follower counts, play his latest tracks. He talked for an hour about his vision, his talent, his destiny, how this was the universe rewarding my belief in him. Then I handed him an envelope. Inside were 3 documents. A cease and desist letter from a law firm, a detailed spreadsheet of every payment I made over 3 years, and a small claims court filing for the maximum amount allowed. He went through them one by one. His confident smile faded as he read. His hands started shaking when he reached the court filing. He looked at me, confused. The arrogance he had all evening disappeared. For the first time, he realized I wasn't going to just cry and give in. He laughed, but it sounded forced. He said I couldn't sue my own son, that the legal papers were a joke. I told him my attorney explained that fraud is still fraud, no matter who commits it. Family doesn't change the law. I had 3 years of evidence. Intercepted mail, fake photos, fabricated stories. Everything documented. His laughter stopped. Then he switched tactics. Tears came instantly. He said he thought I believed in him, that I supported his dreams, that parents are supposed to help their children. His voice cracked perfectly. His shoulders shook. I stayed quiet and watched him perform. It was the same act he used when he showed me his fake medical school acceptance letter. Back then I hugged him. This time I didn't move. When the tears didn't work, his face changed. The sadness vanished, replaced with anger. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly. He said if I went through with this, I'd never see him again. No calls, no visits, nothing. I'd lose my only son over money. I stood up too, and told him I already had 3 years ago when he chose to lie, steal, and deceive me every single day. Then I walked out. I hadn't even allowed myself to fully feel everything yet because I was so focused on the practical side. Legal action and recovering the money. During the rest of that first session, we talked about the difference between the Jason I believed I raised and the person he actually turned out to be. Charlotte helped me understand that I had been a good mother who supported her child's education. Jason made the choice to take advantage of that support. His behavior reflected who he is, not any failure on my part as a parent. By the end of the session, I felt drained, but lighter in a strange way. Charlotte scheduled weekly sessions leading up to mediation. In our second meeting, she asked me what outcome would feel like justice. I thought about it for a long time. I didn't want Jason destroyed or left with nothing, even after everything he'd done. A part of me still remembered the little boy who used to bring home drawings and tell me about his day. But I couldn't have a relationship with the man who stole from me unless he truly changed, and proved it over time through consistent actions. I wanted him to admit his lies in writing. I wanted him to repay whatever he could, even if it took years. More than anything, I wanted consequences that would actually teach him accountability instead of letting him manipulate his way out again. Charlotte asked if I believed he was capable of real change. I admitted I didn't know. When I confronted him, he showed no remorse. But maybe losing his business partner and facing legal consequences had shaken him. Maybe mediation would force him to face what he did. Or maybe he'd just learn to lie better next time. Charlotte reminded me that I couldn't control whether Jason changed, but I could control how I protected myself moving forward. Mediation wasn't about fixing him or rebuilding our relationship. It was about setting boundaries and enforcing consequences. If anything changed in the future, it would come from his effort, not mine. 2 days before mediation, Martina came over to help me prepare. She brought takeout and we sat at my kitchen table going through possible scenarios. She pretended to be Jason, trying different manipulation tactics. She cried, apologized dramatically, used guilt, made vague promises about paying me back someday. Each time I responded calmly, sticking to facts, evidence, and accountability. Martina reminded me that I didn't owe Jason forgiveness or a relationship. Protecting myself didn't make me a bad mother. It made me someone who refused to be used again. We practiced until I could respond without getting emotional or backing down. Before leaving, she hugged me and said she was proud of how strong I'd become. The mediation took place in a conference room downtown. Samuel met me in the lobby, carrying a thick folder of evidence. Inside, the room had a long table, chairs on both sides, and large windows overlooking the city. The mediator arrived first and explained the rules. Jason's lawyer came next. Jason entered last. He looked different, quieter, smaller somehow. He wore simple clothes instead of his usual flashy style. His hair was neat, but his face looked tired. When he glanced at me, he quickly looked away. The mediator asked him to speak first. He gave what sounded like a rehearsed apology. He said he was young, overwhelmed, and made mistakes. He admitted he dropped out but framed everything as poor judgment, not fraud. He avoided words like lying or stealing. He tried to present himself as a confused kid who didn't know how to disappoint his mother. I recognized the performance immediately. When it was my turn, I read the statement Charlotte helped me prepare. I spoke about working double shifts until my body ached. About eating cheap meals so I could send him $5,000 every month. About cashing out my retirement and selling my property because I believed in his future. I spoke about the lies, the intercepted mail, the fake photos, the life he was living while I sacrificed everything, and the $180,000 gone, along with my security and years of my life. When I finished, the room went silent. The mediator asked Jason if he understood the damage he caused. At first, he just said yes quietly, but she pushed him to explain. After a long silence, he admitted he knew what he was doing was wrong. He said he believed he could fix everything later by becoming successful and paying me back. He thought success would erase the lies. He said he was afraid to admit he failed. Hearing that made something inside me snap. I told him he wasn't afraid enough to stop lying for 3 years. Not afraid enough to stop stealing, intercepting my mail, or watching me work myself into exhaustion while he partied. The mediator stepped in gently, but I could tell she understood. She asked him directly if he knew fear didn't justify fraud. He said yes. Then we moved on to settlement terms. Samuel presented our proposal clearly and calmly. Jason would repay $50,000 over 10 years. He would sell his equipment to make an immediate payment. He would sign a statement admitting fraud. If he failed to pay, we could pursue criminal charges. Jason's lawyer countered with $30,000 and no admission of fraud. Samuel refused immediately. After hours of negotiation, we reached a final agreement. Jason would pay $40,000 over 8 years with monthly payments. He would sell his equipment for an upfront payment. Most importantly, he would sign a document admitting he obtained the money through deception. If he missed multiple payments, I could take further legal action. I agreed. Jason hesitated but eventually said yes. We signed the documents. I knew I wouldn't recover everything, not even close, but it was something, and more importantly, it held him accountable. For the first time, everything was official, real, documented. When I left the building, I felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because the uncertainty was gone. 2 weeks later, the first payment arrived. I transferred it into a new retirement account, one only I controlled. Slowly, I started rebuilding. The monthly payments continued. I reduced my work hours slightly and focused on recovery. Over time, I stopped checking obsessively. The money became what it really was, restitution, not support. I started thinking about my own future again. I looked at properties, planned investments, made decisions carefully this time with boundaries in place. Months passed, then years. Jason continued making payments. Eventually, he sent a letter. He said he understood what he took. Not just money, but time, trust, and security. He didn't ask for anything, just said he hoped for forgiveness someday. I didn't respond. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I won't. Either way, I'm no longer carrying the weight of it. Years later, I bought a small condo, then another. My retirement isn't what I originally planned, but it's stable. It's mine. Built through my own effort and protected by the lessons I learned. I still think about Jason sometimes. I don't know if he truly changed or just learned to hide it better. But I do know this. I survived his betrayal. I rebuilt my life. And I made sure no one would ever have the chance to take everything from me again.